Hello everybody and welcome. I'm Matt, Senior Client Success Manager for White House Custom Color. Before we get talking with Barry here, I just have a few reminders for you. If you haven't yet, make sure and hit the subscribe button for our WHCC YouTube so you can get notified about cool events like we're going to do today. Follow along on Instagram at WHCC Pro, and for all of your product questions, sizing options, all the fun stuff that WHCC has to offer, check out WHCC.com. If you do have questions while we're doing the live today, make sure and put them into the chat, and we'll have Barry answer them live for us. If you're watching the rewind of this, put them into the comments and we will make sure and get those questions answered for you. So thank you so much for being here with us, Barry. We had an amazing time with you yesterday, and we're excited to have everybody be a part of getting into your head today. So for people that are following along that have not heard of you or don't know who you are, can you tell them who you are, where you're from, and a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm Barry Spruce. I'm a nature photographer from Townsend, Tennessee. It's a gateway town to the Smoky Mountains.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely beautiful part of the country.
It is.
Yes, absolutely. So when we were talking about the content for today's live, I always ask, like, what is front of mind, you know, to the people that I'm going to be having conversations with, and you right away you said it's the learning curve. And if I knew then what I know now,
absolutely.
What are some of the big changes in the industry, and how would that impact if you were starting over? So let's just start off with that. So how fast was the learning curve when you got going?
Unfortunately, it was very slow for me. Not only did I not use resources, but I probably didn't do as much photography as I should have at the beginning. Mm-hmm. But the most difficult part was I didn't use the resources that I had, such as maybe a local university to get into some classes, or just get involved in some of the photography groups.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would encourage people to do that for sure.
Absolutely. And you not only encourage people to do that, you were on the education side of it now. In fact, that's a big part of your business.
Probably around 6 or 8 years ago, I got asked to do some teaching in non-credit programs, and it's really important to analyze yourself in order to teach. And so now that I'm in that part of it, it's something that I encourage other people to do.
Absolutely. What is that saying? There's no better way to learn than to try to teach.
That's it in a nutshell, because if you really want to know how to teach people what you know, you have to know it you have to know yourself.
Yeah.
So.
And be able to explain it.
And that's even more difficult sometimes.
Absolutely.
So sometimes writing it down first and then talking to a family member or something before you go out and actually teach it to people you don't know.
Yeah, for sure. Another really cool thing that you said right at the beginning of our conversation was you had to analyze yourself, and you already mentioned that quickly here, but I don't want to skip across that, and I think it's very, very important for everybody that's listening along today to understand, like, you really did dissect who Barry Spruce was. And just to give a little teaser to everybody that's following along, we had an awesome day yesterday.
We did.
And we're going to be coming out with a series video that's going to be you instructing actually out in the field, but there's more to come on that.
Yes.
But when you were breaking down and analyzing yourself like we saw yesterday, what were some of those components that you were like, oh man, I do that and I don't even realize I'm doing it? You know?
It was almost everything. I was surprised myself that I didn't know as much about what I was doing, but as I started to break it down, I found myself breaking it down even more, and then realized, that is a huge benefit to myself, and I need to start doing that more. So it benefited me as well as being able to communicate it to other people.
Yep.
Just little things that I did, such as how I approach wildlife, or how I would not just capture the scene the one time, but maybe make setting changes, even though I think I got it really good or perfect the first time, and try other things, and then also try to change the angle a little bit. So all those little things, and I started analyzing myself. What do I do when I take this photograph, and how can I communicate that and teach it to others?
Yeah, for sure. And it was really interesting to watch you yesterday when you would come across something, and it was almost like you had like this sixth sense of like, okay, wait, there, I hear something. You used your phone to analyze some of the calls the birds were making and things like that, and you're taking in the whole environment at all at the same time, and then you're honing in on, okay, there, and then you would left or right or up or down, and I can't remember the exact quote, but it was, small changes can make a significant impact.
They can.
So talk to us about that statement right there.
So what I realized after when I started taking, say, my classes outside into a field trip or something, was that they didn't always see things the way that I saw it as well. So I would try to figure out how I would shoot that particular scene. And I would capture it maybe on my cell phone when they weren't really paying that much attention. And then I would ask them to capture it. So now I would show them what I saw and tell them why I saw it that way. But then I would tell them, okay, now you've seen the way I was creative. Now I want you to take this same spot and be creative yourself and find another way to capture it.
Right.
But when I'm in the woods like that, I'm very in tune to everything that's going on around me. So the reason I listen to wildlife and birds and things like that is they'll tell you what's going on. And it sometimes gets you to point in the right direction to spend more focus on that.
Yeah, I love that. They'll tell you what's going on.
They will.
Yeah, that's really cool. So because you have been in the industry for so long, you started with film.
I did.
Yes, and that was very different then. And I love the story about the little tablet or the notebook in the pocket. Let's talk about that a little bit.
So when I shot film, I wasn't a professional photographer, but I was a learning photographer. And I'd been doing photography basically since I was 10 years old. As I got out of high school and started buying better equipment, I started getting more and more into photographing the wildlife and the nature that was around me growing up. And so what we had to do was spend a lot of time to set up a scene, and we would take notes. And the reason we had to do that is we didn't have the instant feedback that we do now with the technologies. So most of the photographers had either a vest or a pocket, and we would keep those notes, and when we used up that film and sent it off, we'd have to wait until we got it back to find out what the end result was. And by having those notes, we would know if we made a mistake, if it was a critical mistake especially, what was wrong, or how to tweak, what we did to. It was costly to shoot film, and back then, now it's, the biggest cost is up front, and then it's less cost as you go. So the technologies now have really made it so that we can have quick feedback, and we don't need to do some of the things that we once did.
Yeah, I mean, when you really think about that, and I'm sure some of the people that are listening along are like, wow, that wouldn't even cross their mind, because you get that instant feedback, right away. But when you sent out film, what did it take, 7 to 14 days to get it back? Yeah. And you may think that you're going to remember, but life
happens in 7 to 14 days.
Yeah, exactly. And now, like you were saying, we're going to talk a little bit more about this, but on the mirrorless cameras, you're making the adjustment and you're seeing on the screen what that's doing instantly.
That's the best part about mirrorless, is when you make a change to one of your light sources, whether it's your aperture or your speed or whatever it is, you get that feedback right away. And some, personal style. Some people like to shoot a little darker than other people do, but at least you can still see where you're at according to a meter or looking at the back of the LCD screen.
Yeah, for sure. And another thing that I really enjoyed about, well, I enjoyed a lot of things, but one thing that really stuck with me, because I was trained in film as well, is that you don't do much post-production at all.
I do not.
Your images are the way that they were. That's how on capture.
I process, but I don't do near as much processing as a lot of people do. This is a second career for me, and I want to have the best image I can, but I'd rather be out shooting or passing on the knowledge that I have than sitting in front of a computer and doing processing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this is a perfect lead-in to your favorite image that happens to be right off of your left shoulder.
Okay.
And even just 15 minutes ago, you were explaining to all of us like why you love that image. And can you do that again? Can you kind of walk through so everybody that's listening today can enjoy you talking about this image that is your favorite image out of 50,000
Sure.
that you have in your catalog?
So I guess the first thing I would say is that I had been taking this image for years. So I'd been in this location in all seasons, and I had tried it over and over, and I got some really good images from that location, but I never felt like I captured it the way that I wanted, especially in the winter. So then the other thing I would say about it is the effort. So whenever you put in extra effort to get an image, it always means more to you as a photographer.
Yeah.
And so this particular day, this whole area was closed, and I had to walk in to get the shot. And it's not a huge distance, it was a couple miles, but on a day that it had just snowed and it was a little cool, but there was sunshine, so it made for, to me, a really nice walk to get in there.
Sure.
The other thing, just briefly I'll tell you, is I made sure I didn't leave footprints in case another photographer came in behind me. So it was a virgin snow and no one had stepped on it, and I made sure that I didn't do that. The other thing that I did is I took about 45 minutes going around and taking images from every angle, but always led back to this one angle. And again, back to film days, this is how we used to do things with natural framing. We couldn't crop like we can today, or not like we can today. And so I went back to this spot, and this was one of the first shots that I took from this photo shoot and one of the last shots that I took. And the reason that it also is appealing to me is I was saying that if I was a painter, this is probably how I would paint it. So when you can capture that 1 second in time and it actually feels like it has all those good qualities, that means more to you. And I will tell you that I actually jumped up and down after taking the image because it just satisfied me so much, and that's probably why it still does today. The last thing I will tell you is this was getting later in the morning, probably around 9:30, and after I took the image, I picked up the tripod to walk away, and the snow slid off the roof.
Oh, wow.
So now the image is not as
Yeah.
it was when I found it, so it was completely different.
Yeah. So a couple things that you mentioned earlier, and you didn't do this time, so I'm just going to bring them up. And it relates directly to getting the capture instead of doing all the post-production. You said, obviously the framing is beautiful, the way that the tree frames. The tree falls into the dip into the fence. The fence snow is perfect. It's not too much, it's not too little.
That's right.
There's not a branch laying in the snow. You mentioned all these things that now I feel like the way photography is, people aren't looking for that pristine original capture. They would be like, okay, well, I can do this and I can do this and I can fix this and I can adjust this. I can add the blue sky, I can add the modeled snow, the light in the snow. I can do all those things, but you have the pure image. That's what that looks like.
Yeah, and like I said, I had done it for years over and over, and but the biggest thing that you just mentioned is having that right amount of snow and everything, so the setting was there, and then it's just a matter of capturing it with the right settings. Of course, we have natural framing, so the reason I kept going back to this one spot was the natural framing. And because there isn't too much snow, you can still see some color in it. So even though it's got a lot of white, you got the green color in the tree and the green color in the hemlocks beside the cabin and stuff. So you still have that color coming into the image. But it's just something that I'd done over and over, and finally the conditions were right for me.
Yeah, and I love how when we do our Zoom calls, you have that image behind you on your fireplace in metal. Yep. And you're always like, that's my favorite image.
It
That's
is.
my favorite image. So really, I mean, and you just said it in so many words, when you're out on a shoot like this, you're really competing against yourself to capture that pure, perfect image in your eye or in your mind.
Well, I definitely want to capture it as good as I can for that time. And, you know, if you can, I do process, like I said, I'm not a overly processing person, but I want to try, I want to enjoy what I do. So if I can find a scene like this, that's fulfilling me.
Yeah.
And then to be able to capture it, that's the second part of it. And then when you can sell it to people and you know that they appreciate it and like it as much as you, that's probably the last part of the puzzle that you're looking for as a nature photographer.
Yeah, absolutely. So how has the capture technology impacted where you're at in your career and how you're training people and how you're guiding and all those things now? Like you've run a big gamut, you know, from film through the early days of digital, you know, now to mirrorless.
Right.
How has that impacted what you're able to do out on location?
So I do a lot of guiding and trying to share what I know with people. And the easiest way to do that is through the best technology or the newest technology out there. So I don't always have clients that have all that, but if they're asking for recommendations, that's one of the things I do is try to get them to go to a mirrorless system so that when they are being guided or working with somebody tutoring them or whatever, the teaching process is so much easier.
Yeah.
So being able to have bigger LCD screens and to have you know, even better quality LCD screens. You don't have to look through their, through their viewfinder all the time. And it's almost like using a phone where you can actually both share and look at it really, quickly and see what's happening.
Yeah.
So the technology of that's just the camera technology, and then the lens technology is important too. So like wildlife having eye detection and different things, it's just so much easier. A lot of people, they'll get into bird photography and they really want to do birds in flight. Well, it's one of the harder things to do, but with the technologies today, it is a lot easier than it used to be. To use a large box so that you can hit the focus quicker and then to have eye detection that will actually put the focus point on the eye, because we always have to have a sharp eye and head.
Right. And as a portrait photographer, when you said that yesterday about getting onto the eye of the bird in flight, I'm like, I would have never considered that would grab such a tiny little thing and hold on to it.
Yeah, so just in the last 3 years, that technology has gone to where now people that do sports, so they can pick like auto racing, and it will actually look for the driver's helmet in the face of the driver inside the car, and I mean, it's just amazing.
That is insane. So before we move on to our next topic here, do you have a recommendation in your opinion? I know you're a Nikon guy now.
Currently.
But you had gone to Canon for a little bit because of the technology upgrade and then went back to Nikon. Do you have recommendations for people listening if they want to get into a mirrorless system? Like what would you recommend?
Yeah, well, there's several manufacturers that have come on the scene in the last, or that have stepped up in the last 10 years, but if you're looking for the versatility in lenses and stuff like that, Canon's been around a long time, so it's an easy system to get into, and because you do have that ability to go with cheaper lenses, medium lenses, expensive lenses, and to have that flexibility in all the different ranges in zoom lenses. So usually beginners or intermediate are using a lot of zoom lenses because it gives you that more versatility. So I think a Canon system would be a good start. And when I went to mirrorless, they were ahead, and that's why I left Nikon for a short while. And I use the R5 system, so I don't like the big body. I like the medium-sized body.
Yep.
And I just loved the lenses that Canon had. So I mean, I think that they have probably the biggest range. Nikon's been around a long time. Everyone's fearful that they're so not diversified in their system, but Sony's very good in video, although I think all of them are good in video now. The biggest thing I like about Canon too is the menu system. So if you're an intermediate photographer and you want a simpler menu system, I think that they have the best.
Okay. And yesterday on location, you had a 180 to 600. And what were your shorter focal distance lenses that you were using?
I used 24 to 120.
Okay.
And then I also had a 14 to 30.
Okay. We actually have a question coming in here.
Okay.
Has the shutter sound change from DSLRs to mirrorless affected your animal wildlife photography?
So it depends if I'm talking about just me personally or when I'm guiding. I like to have a little bit of sound and I like from my clients too, so I know if they're getting the shot. So I'm setting them up on something, and I like that I can tell if they're getting the shot so that I can say, okay, well, maybe move to the side a little bit now and get it from this angle. So it's hard for me when I'm guiding to have someone shooting without sound.
Okay.
But I know that I shoot without sound a lot too. So when I'm in a blind, I always shoot without sound because, sometimes in a blind I'm doing bobcat or something like that, and their sense of hearing, and they're very skittish, so probably not a good idea to have a loud shutter.
Yeah, and plus you probably don't want to have a close encounter with a bobcat necessarily.
They're not too big.
They're not too big. So when you're out in the field, and this is one of my questions for you when we were talking, what do you do with all your files? Because like as an example, and just so everybody knows that's listening too, you actually flew into Minnesota on Friday. You went to Ely, and you spent 2 days up there with a guide photographing. It was your first time in Minnesota, so you wanted to take advantage of that. Like with all of that capture that you're doing, photo and video, how are you keeping that safe until you get home?
Yes, I think that the way that I do it, a lot of people do it that way, but I know there's some people that don't as well. But what I like to do personally is to each evening take the card and put it in a card reader, and I have that attached to a laptop, and then have an external hard drive also attached to the laptop, and basically just take it from the card and get it into a external hard drive. Mm-hmm. That's just temporary until I get it home, and then of course I try to have like 3 backups. So it's we had a Drobo system that's storing like I think 60 terabyte of information, and then we have cloud, and then we have those external drives. We will use an external drive to hold about a year's worth of images, and so now we have like 20 of those, and we can put those in a safe or something, and we always have that flexibility too.
Awesome. And I know that you are an advocate of shooting in RAW. So tell everybody why. Why do you insist on shooting in RAW?
The biggest reason I like JPEG because you can, when you're looking at your LCD screen, it's a JPEG file, and it looks better, right? Like for instance, if you were just going to post something right onto social media or something. But as far as the technology, how fast things change, to have the raw image, and within a year, just having the raw image could help you that much more with a new technology. Mm-hmm. And now when you get into it 10 years or 20 years down the road, and having the raw file has so much more information. But JPEG has its advantages. If you wanted to shoot a quick video just to send to a friend or something like that, you don't have to shoot that in RAW if you're not going to use it down the road.
Right. But as your business, and the gallery and your sales depend on that. I mean, to have the full file, the full raw file, full information, that as technology gets better, which it always will,
right?
You have the ability to manipulate that file with a greater depth.
For sure. It's always better to be safe than sorry, and to have more information, to have all that still as you shot it, and stored somewhere is what you want to be able to go back to if it's 3 years down the road, and now there's something that will assist you in making that image better.
Yeah, for sure. So you've mentioned a couple times, we talked just a little bit about it, a lot of your basis of your business and where you're at now is passing on your knowledge and guiding and teaching at the university and doing workshops and classes. Like we were talking about a lighthouse one that you have coming up.
That's right.
That you ride in helicopters with no sides, and you're doing things that are really outside the box with your students. How is that continuing to challenge you as a photographer, as a creative, when you have, in your own words, you said, I have people who are very new to the industry, and I have some people that are excellent, excellent photographers.
Yeah,
like,
even better than me.
I wasn't going to say it.
That's fine. So when it comes to setting up workshops, there's a lot of people doing this, and there's actually big companies that do it, that hire photographers to go on location somewhere. So how do you make what you do, even if it's talking about your gallery, how do you make things a little bit different so that you have something? It doesn't have to be completely different, but have a little twist on it that people will be drawn to. So like the lighthouse workshop you were talking about, we do all the lighthouses from land, and I've been doing that. I grew up in New England, and this is a New England-based workshop. And so how do you make it a little bit different? So I came up with the idea of doing them all from land, which is always looking toward the ocean, which is looking east.
Yeah.
But to the point of, well, what if we want a different angle on that lighthouse? And what would make it more fun than just doing them from land? And so I came up with the helicopter, to do that, just exactly to do that. So we will use 2 helicopters usually, because my workshops are usually 4 or 5 people, and we'll have a couple people in the back seat, and we have to go around the lighthouses in both directions so that everybody has the same opportunity.
Yep.
And now you're getting shots from the ocean side, and you're usually having better lighting because we do this usually in the morning, and you have early morning sun, and it just makes it more fun, and it gives it a little twist and something a little different than other people that are doing lighthouse workshops. So.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's just one example.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I try to do that with all my workshops, try to include something just a little bit different.
Yeah, and I'm assuming, to kind of bring this full circle, when you're teaching your workshops and working with students and getting them set up for success, as a nature photographer, I'm assuming that protecting your files and knowing what to do to not put them at risk is a piece of that. Like, I remember when we were talking on the phone or on the Zoom call, you said, the first thing I do when I open my hotel room door is I plug in my batteries, and the second thing I do is I download my card. And to clarify for everybody too, once you download that card, you're not formatting it. You are keeping the card itself as a backup as well.
I usually do. So I have enough cards now where those will get just turned over, reversed, and put back into a slot.
Okay.
And just in case something were to happen, and then when I get home and I make sure I have that saved in a couple different areas, then I will clean the cards, but I don't clean the card until then.
Yeah. And then you also said that you only keep your cards for a period of time, and then you sell them off, replace them with faster cards, newest technology, all that too.
Yeah, and I didn't start out doing that, but I do it more often now. And one of the other reasons I do that is I'm starting to do more video now, and video is requiring faster and bigger cards and stuff. So I like a card that's big enough to take care of the job, but I don't want to shoot for 4 days on it. So I'm always looking for that sweet spot. So that it can, and usually my cameras have two different card slots, and I try to dedicate one to video. So I make sure that video card is fast enough and big enough to handle that video part of it. But yes, once you get a couple years into these cards, there could be some degradation. So I'm trying to turn those over every couple years.
Yeah, and another rule you have is you never process on the road.
No.
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 So again, just to make sure everybody heard that before, you don't do a lot of post-processing. You work a little bit in Lightroom, but you're not going in and highly manipulating the images.
Yeah.
But even that, you're not doing until you get back to the gallery.
Yeah, so what I found out when I used to, at the very beginning, when I printed my own stuff and I was processing with a laptop, is a laptop can, when you tilt the laptop a little bit, it makes a lot of difference. So to match what your print is from your laptop is extremely difficult. And I have a lot of people asking, well, I don't know why I can't get it to print. And that's just one of the many reasons, taking control from your printer and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, from your printer. But it's kind of a lot of factors involved in that.
Just being able to be quiet in the gallery and work with the images instead of the chaos of a hotel, probably somewhat too.
It's so one of the things my wife has learned, that don't talk to me when I'm uploading images.
Right.
And it's a little easier when I'm processing images, but especially uploading, I want to make sure everything's safe.
Right.
But even processing images, it's like, because you get to a certain point, and usually I like to do about 3 or 4 different things in my processing. It's very important. If I probably process 3 or 4 photos out of a whole day's shoot.
Wow.
And the rest are just stored. And so let me get these 3 or 4 images correct the way that I want them.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, not having disturbing, whether it's phone calls or whatever. That's
right. And Melinda's in the back of the room. She didn't want to be on camera today, but we still have to mention that she's here, and she's lovely, and she was with us all day yesterday, and she's a good partner.
She's a trooper.
Yeah, exactly. So before we move into the next section, as long as we're talking about color and printing and all that stuff, we know that you love metal prints from White House.
I do.
We also watched an album be made this morning with the team out on the floor, and it was fun to watch how into that you were in following the process, and when Lori was doing the covers and the leathers and all that stuff. So we're just going to kind of flip through this here quick. Oops, I have it upside down. I had that planned out so well, didn't I? And show it to Connor along the way. So these are some of the images that Barry actually sent us prior to the visit. And this is 8x12, one of our albums. So this has the thick white inserts. You can kind of see it from the side. And we made a change right at the end and did the rounded page corners to match the rounded album cover corners. But that's your favorite image in there.
It is.
Yep. So just absolutely stunning. And it was just so fun to watch you enjoy this process so much and ask the questions. And albums and books weren't something that you've really done a lot of in the past, but there's so much possibility with a coffee table book or a sample book, to show your clients, a lot of images.
Yeah, I think that like if I was to do books for people, one of the things I would do is pre-order, because of course there's a major expense into a big album, a big book like that.
Yep.
Whereas the things that we usually carry in our gallery are things that I know someone can walk in, and like I said, our theme is to take home a little piece of the Smokies, and so that's why we have that type of purchase available. This would be something, and I do have a lot of followers, and if they wanted to do something like this, I'd be glad to do pre-orders for it.
Yeah, and something that I learned on our call when we were talking about what you show in the gallery, you said that you only show images from the Smokies.
That's right, even though I do workshops all the East Coast, so all the way from Canada to the Everglades, and then Tetons, and we got some other things coming up, Alaska and some other things. But since our name of our gallery is Cades Cove Gallery, which is the top destination in the Smokies, we decided to only carry Smoky Mountain stuff in that gallery.
But more to come on that.
More to come. Online, we are doing more online for sure. So if you want images from Tetons or Florida, somewhere like that, we will have that on online store.
Awesome. And as long as we're talking about the Tetons, the image that's directly behind you of the moose.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, so one of the things that I really enjoyed with the trip last year to the Tetons was to not only do the typical way you learn to do wildlife, to shoot it wide open at 2.8 or 4 or whatever, and to do just head and shoulder shot, or was to incorporate landscape photography with my wildlife. And I call it wildscapes. I didn't invent it. People have been doing this for a while, but we talked a little bit about how you grow as a photographer. And so one of the things that I fell in love with when I was in the Tetons was actually doing this wildscape type photography. So even though this is a wildlife shot, it's shot in like f/16. So I'm trying to get everything in the image, sharp detail, to show this is not only a moose, but it's a moose from the Tetons, and you can tell that by the peaks behind it.
Yeah.
So I started thinking more into places I go, and maybe I can do this in other locations as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It just tells a story without even having to ask.
Right, like if it was just a shot of a moose with no, just a field background, then, where'd you get the moose? Was that in Minnesota?
Right,
No.
It could have been.
Yeah, could have been a couple days ago.
yeah, for sure. So if you were going to think about like instructing and teaching your students and going to the Tetons, going to do lighthouses, going to Alaska, going to Florida, doing all these places, there's a lot of environmental challenges. There's potential of animals causing issues. I'm a little bit more of an indoorsy guy. You're much more of an outdoorsy guy.
For sure.
What is your primary message to your students, getting them ready for these experiences? Like,
well, it's not just students. So you got to remember, some of these people are retired, and
Okay.
I would call them clients. But
Okay.
so the one of the biggest things is, if these people have never been to this area, how to dress for it, how to be prepared weather-wise, and then it's lighting. So if we're shooting in Florida, one of the advantages of Florida is that it has a lot of light. So you don't have to worry about trying to find light like you do, say, in the Smoky Mountains, which is very green, we're very wet. Sometimes we really need to change our settings to try to find and create more light. So if the client hasn't been in that location before, to give them a really good idea of what the experience is going to be like. So I don't share any information, of course, until they are a client.
Right.
But once they are, the communication is really key, and communication in preparation. So
that was the word I was waiting for.
So the preparation is when the client starts getting happier and happier with the situation, because they want to go there feeling like they have the right clothing, have the right gear, have the right mentality, and then of course once we get there too, that's all part of, if you're driving location to location, there's prep work even in that to tell them, okay, so this next area we're going to is wide open, and this is going to be more of your settings, or this is going to be more what you're looking for. So it's the more people feel like they're prepared for what they're going to shoot,
Yeah.
the better they feel about the whole experience.
Yeah.
And then if you can actually locate or put them on what they're looking for, that's of course even better.
Right, and that's another thing that I learned a lot yesterday. We all did, all of us, our team that's in the room here now. But when you mentioned, when you were in Ely, I have these certain things that I'm looking for. When people come to you, I'm looking for these certain things. I was just, assuming that when you went into nature, you saw the bird, you saw the squirrel, you saw whatever the subject matter may be, and you just photographed that. And I know that you have a theory about that. You have your kind of your goals, and then you have, what was your saying yesterday? It's leaving my brain right now, about opportunity.
Yeah, so opportunity's critical, but we always have a questionnaire for people before we even go. What is, like, if it's just a guided tour and they're visiting the Smokies, well, what are your main goals? And then I try to set up that tour so that they have the opportunity for the different types of goals that they have. And if someone says they're flexible and they're opportunist, and maybe opportunist is a word you were looking for.
Yep.
So an opportunist photographer, they say, okay, well, I really want maybe a black bear mom with cubs, but I like everything. I like all wildlife, or I also like sunrises and waterfalls. So what I usually do is try to set up a day with them that we can accomplish as many things as they want, but always focusing on what's more the priority subjects for them.
Yeah, for sure.
But if you're an opportunist photographer, then if that first goal doesn't come your way, but say we come across a red fox with kits or something like that, you know, babies, people like babies. So, I mean, it's be welcoming to whatever nature brings you that day.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great quote right there. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit more about, you know, the business side of it, the gallery side of it. Now, Melinda was nice enough to prepare this little graph for us. And if you're okay with me sharing this, so you're really at an even split in your business. And going back to the beginning of our conversation, you're focusing on guiding and education and giving back and workshops and teaching and taking this massive hard drive of knowledge, you know, and downloading it into people who want to learn. And really, your business is split right now. You know, you have your product sales, your gallery, your wholesale, your online. You have 51%, and then 49% is your workshops, guided tours, lessons, and presentations. And talking to you and getting to know you more, it's interesting how you are aware of that, and you're part of your career where you're ready to give back and teach, you know, and even though you call them clients, they're still learning from you. They're still your students.
They are.
You know?
I just didn't want you to think they were all like college students.
Yeah, for sure. But if we're talking about the gallery side of it, the sales piece of it, I did think it was very interesting, and I think everybody listening along will as well, how you prepare for your sale. So when a dentist's office, doctor's office, commercial space, somebody that wants to decorate their home with your images, how do you do that process with them of selling them finished art for their walls?
So there's two different things there. The gallery, we try to set it up like, okay, here's a wall in the gallery that if someone was trying to fill a space, this is how you could do a wall. And so because they already can see that this is how you spread out to cover a 12-foot area, then that's in their mind, and they're like, okay, yeah, that's the size wall that I need to fill. But if we get contacted by a business or a homeowner that says, I want to do a couple different rooms in my home, or I want to do my dental office, then I like to go look at the location first. So if they live locally, that's one of the first things I'll do. And then while I'm there, I take notes and I get a feel for what is their favorite type of photography. And again, we're back to people that either live in the Smokies or are visiting the Smokies. They usually want something from the Smoky Mountains. But if they don't, I write that down as well. So then I try to get a feel for, say they want waterfalls and sunrises and barns. Well, then I look at their spaces and I try to figure out, well, there's a need for a couple verticals, and there's maybe 6 horizontal images. So I write all this down, and then I will go back and fill up a thumb drive of, maybe 100 to 150 images of the things that they told me that they liked. Then I'll set up a second appointment, and I'll go to their home and plug into their large screen TV, sit down where they're comfortable in their home, and show them those images. And when they run through the first time, sometimes they only eliminate maybe 50% of them. So then I try to narrow it down. And once we get down to, say I know that they have a need for 8 different pictures on their wall, I'll try to narrow it down more by, did you really like this one or this one? And then once I get that feel, it's just let them talk about it and let them get back to me, and I'll send them an email or something with those images. And they'll say, yeah, out of those 10, I want these 8. And then we process it, and that's when we contact you.
That's right. And for those of you listening along that are portrait photographers that are doing in-person sales, do you notice some similarities there? I mean, that really is the way that we're seeing a lot of success in portrait photography, is when people are meeting in a home at a studio and going through just exactly how you described, narrowing down, comparing side by side, guiding that client to what you feel as the artist, what should be in place. And just pulling from our conversation over lunch a little bit, you said you have a lot of people that come in, they say, okay, I want, something that's 12 feet long.
Right.
And you right away say, no.
You probably want to fill a 12-foot long space, but you don't have to do it with one picture.
Right. So everybody that knows me and that listens to me, you'll know that I talk about multiples and selling in multiples. It's exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, I like 3 myself. I like to fill a space with 3, and I really like a larger one in the center and 2 smaller it's almost complementary pictures, whether they're other landscapes or wildlife.
Yeah, and so you're taking both of your styles, your wildlife and your landscape, combining them, but you're making sure the seasons match, the color tones match. Your calendar that you showed us before, your main image, you're using that as your header, and you're putting images into the month that match. Like, you have an artistic eye for what belongs together.
Yeah, professional offices, I've learned a lot by doing offices like that. And the biggest one I did was 23 pieces. And when you can sit down with the owner of an office and say, I really think that and they really lean on your expertise, that's when you have a really good relationship, and things can, you definitely can please the client because they trust in you and they know what they like as well, and you put that together.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's been so fun to have you and Melinda here with us. Yesterday was fantastic. We had a great luncheon in Wisconsin.
It's been a great trip.
Yeah, it has been, and we really appreciate you taking time away from your busy schedule, getting up at the crack of dawn to go with us yesterday, and we've had a great time. So for people that are listening along, Barry, that are interested in you and your work and guiding and workshop, that kind of stuff, where can they find you online for your website, Instagram, Facebook, like all that?
So I guess the biggest thing is barrysprucephotography.com. That will lead you to other things such as online sales or that type of thing. And then Spruce Photo Tours is for my workshops.
Yeah.
And social media is Barry Spruce Photography.
Awesome. And then you have one for Kate's Cove Gallery as well.
We do. Yep.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you again. We really appreciate it. And we hope that everybody listening has really enjoyed this conversation with Barry as well. And just a quick reminder, if you're watching this on the rewind, make sure and put any questions that you have for Barry into the comments. Make sure and hit the subscribe button for the WHCC YouTube. Follow along on Instagram at WHCC Pro. And for all of your product questions, check out WHCC.com. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.